of a stable dimension, the composition of the diamond is stable.
Thank you very much for this invitation. So I will start. I will start with X, which is a smooth real topological manifold of dimension m. So let's assume that. Assume that it is oriented and connected. So then, if I consider Hm of x cross x with a q coefficient, you have the Q-net decomposition. Which decomposes this space as a Q's for V plus Q equal to M of HP of XQ. So it's here a Betti cohomology with Q coefficient, tensor HQ of XQ. Well, so such a decomposition, you can also have it with the Z coefficient if the cohomology of X is without torsion, but for the moment I will just work with the Q coefficient. And then it's why I put the fact that the variety is oriented and also compact and oriented. Then you can use Poincaré duality to rewrite this as the direct sum over all P between 0 and M of Rho HP of XQ, HP of XQ. And concretely, so if you have a class here, what it gives you, so it gives you something in this space of endomorphism, and to alpha you associate the element of this endomorphism space, which to gamma associate. So what I will call maybe alpha upper star. This is the endomorphism which to a class gamma associate PR1 lower star. So it is the integration of over the fibers, Gysin morphism of PR2 upper star of gamma K product with alpha. Okay. So in particular, that makes clear that now you can consider the diagonal. So the diagonal of X. So it is an oriented submanifold of codimension M. What is important is that the normal bundle is oriented. So it has a cohomology class. And it is completely obvious by the description, the explicit description of this map here, that via this isomorphism here, the delta x, this is simply the sum over all P of the identity of HP of X Q. Okay. So now, so let me consider more closely this Q-net decomposition of the diagonal. So it has a first term which is in well, for P equal to 0, and the first term by this you can see this by this composition and by the fact that you know that it has to act as the identity on H0 of XQ. So okay, so this is the cohomology class of X cross a point. So you choose any point of okay. plus, and the rest of the QNet decomposition that will be for positive P. Okay, alpha I. So this will belongs to hi of x q tensor. Okay, for positive I. So this is just saying that the first term here, it acts as an identity on H0 by this formula. Okay. So now the point that if you think to these cohomology classes as being cohomology classes of corresponding to homology classes, corresponding to closed contours on the varieties, you should the cohomology of positive degrees, it corresponds to cohomology classes of say submanifolds of positive, strictly positive codimension. So you can think to this term as not dominating x via the first projection. Well, so this formula is maybe a bit abstract, but you could think to this part of the cohomology has been generated by classes of contours which are products, where here the Z has positive codimension, so nothing dominate X by the first projection. So the conclusion is that topologically, the difference delta x minus this class x cross a point is something that somehow this is a class of a topological cycle which does not dominate the first the x by the first projection. So now, of course, I am going to change the setting, and I want to consider the case where X is a complex projective manifold of dimension. Now the dimension is complex dimension. So now the M which was before, it's 2n, so it's oriented, compact, etc. All this apply. And if I want to mimic what I observed here, the natural property to introduce is what we call, so let me, because sometimes I don't want to rewrite it each time, so it's the property of cohomological decomposition of the diagonal with Q coefficients. So let's say that this is a property. So I will say that X has a cohomological decomposition of the diagonal with Q coefficients. So this is a definition. If I can write the cohomology class so of X as a class of X cross a point. Okay. This is a class of now of a complex manifold plus the class of what we call an algebraic cycle of dimension n with Q coefficient. Okay. So this equality, of course, is in H2n of x cross x q. I want my algebra. So an algebraic cycle of dimension n with Q coefficient, by definition, is just something which is a formal sum. Z is a sigma of alpha I Zi. The alpha I are in Q, and the Zi. They are, of course, contained in x cross x, and with so they are a closed algebraic subset. Of dimension n. Okay. And well, now I wrote absolutely nothing, because obviously the difference delta x minus x cross point is itself an algebraic cycle. But now the condition on Z with the property that the Zi do not dominate X by the first projection. This is a kind of analog of that property that had this difference term topologically. The property that this map here is not surjective or dominating. Okay, so it's a very nice property. It's kind of a beginning of the decomposition of the diagonal using only algebraic cycles. Now the problem is that it turns out to be extremely restrictive. So there is the following lemma. That if X has a cohomological decomposition of the diagonal with Q coefficient, or satisfies this property written here, then X has no holomorphic forms of positive degree. So here, this is the sheaf of holomorphic I formed. So this space is just a space of global holomorphic forms of degree I on X. And well, that's more or less obvious because let me indicate the reason for that. As I said, any cohomology class on the product X cross X acts on the cohomology of X by the formula that I have wrote here. So let the two terms here act on the cohomology of X, in particular I consider the class of holomorphic forms. So this is well known to be contained in the cohomology of X with the C coefficient. That's part of the Hodge decomposition theorem. So let's apply these various class to them. So on the left, I get alpha because the diagonal, the class of the diagonal acts as identity. Well, because the form has positive degree, this term obviously acts as 0. And then I get the Z upper star alpha. But by assumption, the Z is supported over D cross X, where D is a closed proper algebraic subset. Namely, you can take for D the union of the image of this projection here. And so it follows immediately that this class Z upper star alpha vanishes on X minus D, which is a dense Zariski open set of X. And now it's an easy lemma that you can prove at hand, that if you have a holomorphic form on a complex projective manifold, and you know that its cohomology class vanishes on a dense Zariski open set, then the holomorphic form is identically 0. Of course, it's because alpha is holomorphic. So you see that this restricts us to a particular class of varieties. Now I would like to mention that in fact conjectures, it's extremely hard, that conversely if there's a spaces, that's another way of writing the space of holomorphic I form. If all the spaces are 0 for positive I, then X satisfies this property of having a homological decomposition of diagonal with Q coefficient. So this is very hard because it contains essentially the generalized Hodge conjecture due to Grothendieck and that will say that under this assumption the cohomology of X is actually coming from is supported on a proper closed algebraic subset plus a little more that is plus maybe Hodge conjecture itself. So in any case that is this conjecture is very hard. So. But now there are varieties which are very interesting and which satisfy this property of having a homological decomposition of the diagonal. And they first appeared in a work of Bloch and Srinivas, which in fact totally initiated this subject, maybe more at the level of Chow groups, where you replace cohomology by Chow groups. And the result is this. So I write the theorem, so it's more like a general principle, especially if you formulate it in terms of Chow groups. So it's so I don't remember about in the paper which was published in the 80s that. If CH0x is equal to z, that is, I'll explain in a minute what this means, then x satisfies this property Q. So what does that mean? This that says that all points are rationally equivalent. And the equivalence of zero cycle, so well, you have the group of zero cycles, so arbitrary combinations of points with integral coefficients, and inside you have a subgroup of zero cycles rationally equivalent to zero. And this is the one which is generated by all the zero cycles that you get. You can write as a form divisor of a function where phi is simply a rational function, non-zero rational function, and C is a curve in X. So that gives you a certain subgroup, and the group CH0 of X is the quotient of Okay, so I am certainly not going to explain the proof of this. I would like to give you a very simple example. Suppose that X is unirational. So unirational, that means the following. There exists a dominating rational map. Okay. Okay. So that means that you have a kind of global rational parametrization of points of X by projective space. So this is the definition of unirational. And then I'm going to prove that. So obviously, if you have this assumption, then CH0 of X is Z. So this is a much stronger assumption. Then X has a rational decomposition, homological decomposition of the diagonal. Okay. So let me explain. Oh. well, the reason for this, so of course this is a particular case of this one, but it's also maybe enlightening to see why this is true. So you have your rational map like this. And by Hironaka, we know how that it is possible to resolve the indeterminacies of this map. So after making several blow-ups, starting from Pn, you get something which here has the degree 1, and here you get a true morphism. This morphism, so now it's a true morphism, and not only a rational map, and it has, because the dimensions are the same and it is surjective, it has a certain degree. And now what happens is that it's very clear that if you consider this map, well, which is going from Pn tilde cross Pn tilde to x cross x, it's totally obvious that when you push forward the class of the diagonal here to x cross x, you get that. So this is the Gysin morphism in cohomology. The push forward of the diagonal of your Pn tilde is n times the diagonal of x. Well, simply because the phi tilde restricted to the diagonal has degree n onto the diagonal of x. And then, so you conclude that the cohomological decomposition of delta x will be deduced from a similar Q cohomological decomposition of the diagonal of Pn tilde. And now for this one, it's quite easy because you start from Pn, and Pn, it's obvious that it has a decomposition of the diagonal. And next you use the fact that here is a degree 1 morphism, or if you like, so Pn has a decomposition of diagonal. Okay, so this is a good point. And then you write that tau per star of delta Pn, it is the diagonal of your Pn tilde because your tau is a morphism of degree 1, so it's an isomorphism over the Zariski open set of Pn, plus a residual thing which is supported on A cross A, where A is the exceptional divisor of tau, that is away from A, the tau is an isomorphism. And that formula shows easily that starting from a decomposition of the diagonal for Pn, you get 1 for Pn tilde, because that cycle is absorbed in the second part, in the decomposition of the diagonal. And then by this argument, you get a decomposition of the diagonal for x. And the reason why it does not work with a z coefficient is this number n, which appears here, which says that it's not the diagonal itself that we have decomposed, but n times the diagonal. Okay, so that's all that I wanted to say on the subject of this property star Q. What I want precisely want to do now is to restrict essentially to varieties which are unirational, or if you prefer rationally connected. But it's not really known if they are different. So from now on, I assume X is unirational or rationally connected. Well, rationally connected, this means that there are many rational curves. And so the rest of my, so in particular, it admits this decomposition of the diagonal with Q coefficient. And I will focus now on on the property, on the similar property, now with z coefficient. So the definition is that x satisfies this star z. That is x has an integral cohomological decomposition of diagonal. If now it's the same as exactly the same formula as before, except that everywhere I want integral coefficient, and that means that I want that delta x is class of x cross a point plus class of a cycle, which now will be a cycle with integral coefficients. Okay, so something like this. The zi will be n-dimensional in x cross x, and the ni will be in z. Okay. Again, with the same proposal, this equality is in h2n of x cross x z. And again, the same property, same condition on z. That they do not dominate x by the first projection. Or, if you prefer, this cycle z is contained in some d cross x, or supported. Support of z is contained in d cross x, where d is a proper closed algebraic. Okay, so I want to motivate the interest for this property, and this is this is coming from the so-called Lurot problem. So, what is this was a classical problem, which is now it's completely unanswered, but we try to get some more refined answers. So there are several definitions. So x is a rational if it is birationally equivalent to projective space. Okay, so it's a birational map, and it is stably rational if some x cross p to the r is rational. Some integer r. And it's very obvious that both properties imply that x is unirational. And the Lurot problem is so, well, there are two versions according to whether you are interested in rationality or stable rationality. So, version A, if x is unirational, is it rational? And the variant, the stable variant is if x is unirational, is it stably rational? And in fact, the answers to these questions are totally known. namely both questions have affirmative answer if the dimension is none greater than 2. In fact, even a stronger fact is known, namely that a rationally connected projective surface is rational, so it's even better. And now the second point is that both questions have a negative answer if n is at least 3. So let me comment a little more about the case of dimension 3. So this is all coming from a work done in the 70s. And there have been three completely different approaches to these questions, A and B. So there was first the Iskowski Manin approach. So they use as a birational invariant the birational automorphism group of X. And of course, if an X is rational, it is birationally equivalent to projective space. So its birational automorphism group has to be the enormous Cremona group. So they exhibit an X which is a unirational, and which with this group very small. In fact, it is just just reduced to the identity. So this X certainly is not rational. So this, of course, addresses the question A. That does not work for a stable rationality problem. Next, there has been the Clemens-Griffiths approach. It's a very efficient criterion which works only in dimension 3. So they use the so-called intermediate Jacobian. So it's a very refined method from algebraic geometry, so I don't want to discuss this. So in any case, that works only in dimension 3, and that addresses only the problem A. They exhibit a unirational trifold, namely the cubic trifold, whose intermediate Jacobian does not satisfy a certain criterion they have, which is necessary to be rational. The cubic trifold in P4 is not rational. But that does not work for a stable rational equivalence, because stable rationality means that your X cross PR for some R is rational. But the rationality criterion of Griffiths, it works only in dimension 3. So if you do X cross something, you lose dimension 3 and you cannot apply the method. So the last method is the one I am interested, because it works in any dimension and it addresses the stable, the second question B. So this is due to Artin and Mumford. And let me say what they do. So they exhibit so-called Artin-Mumford invariance. Which is, well, you consider the integral Betti cohomology of X of degree 3, and you take the torsion of that. Okay. And the result is that this group, this Artin-Mumford, is stable birational invariant, which means that what I call stable birational equivalence by definition, x and y are stably birational if x cross some PR is birationally equivalent to y cross p to the s for some integers r and s. So this is the notion of stable birational equivalence. And to say that this group is a stable birational invariant, it says that, in other words, if x and y are stably birationally equivalent, then they have the same Artin-Mumford invariant. Well, it's not that hard to prove, but maybe I won't do it. And of course, the way they use it to address the stable Lurod problem is that they construct, and they will, these examples, they will come back at the end of the talk. They construct unirational threefold with a non-trivial Artin-Mumford invariant. In their example, I think this group is just Z over 2Z. So now, why this property here is, which is the one I am interested in, is relevant for the problem? Is simply the following. That proposition. Well, so I wanted to say in higher dimensions, some higher degree generalization of this Artin-Mumford invariant have been constructed. This is done under the name of unramified cohomology. I don't want to enter into this. But for dimension 3, the only invariant which has been used up to recently criterion for non-stable rationality was this invariant due to Artin-Mumford. And furthermore, it's very hard to construct these examples. I mean, they do not come naturally in the nature, the nature of algebraic geometry. So, and so the result, which is not very hard to check, is the property which I call star Z is stably birationally invariant property. That means concretely that if so x and y are stably birationally equivalent, Then X has an integral decomposition of diagonal. I should say cohomological decomposition of diagonal. If and only if Y has it's absolutely not hard to prove, because you have to just to check that this property is invariant under this operation. That is, and this is quite easy because PR itself has a decomposition of diagonal, and you also have to check that it is invariant under birational equivalence. And this I more or less proved at some point. But well, that's not here anymore. But it's very easy to see that if you have a morphism from x to x prime, which is of degree 1, then using this pullback and push forward for relations for the diagonals, you have the x prime above has the decomposition of the diagonal if and only if the x has. And then you use, of course, Hironaka resolution to reduce to that case. Okay? So that's the point which is interesting. So that means that a priori that property is something that you can use for this problem. Next, the second point is that okay, I think it was exactly here. If you do n equal 1 in that situation, you exactly get that point that I wrote here. So the second point is the following. It just shows that this property, in fact, it controls this Artin-Mumford invariant. If X has an integral homological decomposition of diagonal, then its Artin-Mumford invariant is 0. So maybe I could explain vaguely why it is true. So you know that so my assumption is exactly this. So you know that the class of the diagonal is the class of x cross a point plus the class of z, so it's an equality in h to n of x cross x with a z coefficient. And the assumption, of course, is that z is it's an algebraic cycle with integral coefficients, and it has to be supported on a d cross x with d closed algebraic subset of x. So let's assume that, so let me call I this, so here I assume that this I, this d is a divisor, for example. It is a hypersurface. So let's assume for simplicity that this d is a smooth hypersurface, which almost never happens in fact. So assume for simplicity that d is smooth. So your z, which is contained in, so it is, you know, it is supported on d cross x. So you can view z as a cycle z prime, which is now in d cross x, and then you push it via this inclusion I to get your z, and then you conclude from this formula that so this formula here. So you let these cohomology classes act on the cohomology of x, and in particular I will be interested in the case of the torsion cohomology of degree 3. So that implies that here I take a cohomology class of positive degree because then this term will act trivially on it, and I get that alpha, which is a diagonal class applied to alpha, is equal to this term applied to alpha, which gives me 0, and this is I have the last term, z upper star alpha. So in, of course, the same group. But the point is that because my z, you can write factors through to d, in fact this is I lower star, the Gysin morphism from cohomology of d to cohomology of x, of this z prime upper star of alpha. And but the fact is that this class, now there is a shift of degree. The Gysin morphism, of course, it shifts by a degree of 2, and the z prime upper star, it shifts by a degree of -2. So it's a d here. Now you do the situation where alpha is of degree 3 and of torsion. So okay. Then you conclude that the z prime upper star alpha belongs to the torsion of H1 of dz, but that group is 0 because it's a H1 group, and so it follows that alpha is equal to 0, which is exactly what I wanted to prove. So what remains to be done is, so we have an invariant, this property star z, a stable birational invariant. We know that it is stronger than the Artin-Mumford invariant, and exactly the same proof will show that it's also stronger than the next degree unramified cohomology group, which is, I didn't define it, so it's useless, but it governs also other things. If I want to go further, I will introduce a Chow decomposition of diagonal, etc., etc. But I wanted to stay on the cohomological level in this talk. So, and now, of course, the question is to exhibit examples where this is useful. That is what I mean by useful is an example where the Artin-Mumford criterion says nothing, and still we can apply this property star z. And this is going next. So the result is the following. So it's something that I proved about 1 year ago, a little more, which says that let X be a very general quartic double solid. Okay, I'll explain in a minute what it is. Then X has no integral cohomological decomposition of diagonal. That is, it does not satisfy that property star z. So, particular, X is not stably rational. But X is unirational. It's a result from a classical algebraic geometry, unirational. And its Artin-Mumford invariant is trivial. So that fact, so let me say what are these examples? They are simply X. So the quartic double solid, so it's a double cover of a P3 defined by an equation u to the square is equal to f of x0 to the x3. And quartic is because this is homogeneous of degree 4. So, of course, this double cover is branched along this surface f equal to 0, where you have only one solution counted twice. So this is what I call a quartic double solid. So you see that they are parameterized by the space of degree 4 homogeneous polynomials in 4 variables, which is a certain P34. And when I say very general, I mean that the result is true if I take the equation f away from a countable union of proper closed algebraic subset of this parameter space. Okay. So I finish by explaining where this is coming from. This is a consequence, in fact, of the Artin-Mumford construction itself and of the generation result that I proved, which is absolutely not difficult and which has been improved by many people since. In fact, what I'm going to state is a degeneration result for the decomposition of the diagonal in cohomology. And curiously, well, cohomology is nice, but in fact it works not so easily than Chow groups. And if I was in the setting of Chow groups, which I could have done from the beginning, except that maybe of course more for algebraic geometers, then the degeneration statement will be much easier to prove and with less assumptions. So this. Maybe let's say that this is theorem A, and I want to get it as a consequence of a certain theorem B. So and this one says the following: that now I assume that I have well, no, B is maybe troubling. Okay. So pi is a projective that is essentially proper, flat, that is the fibers all have the same dimension, and C is a smooth curve. Okay, so it's a complex curve. If you like, you take a disk. And assume that for the general T in C, of course, xt is a smooth and satisfies this property of having a cohomological decomposition of diagonal with a z coefficient. And assume furthermore that the central fiber, so I choose a specific point here where I call it a degeneration because x0 has some singularities. Assume that x0 has an ordinary double point. Okay, so ordinary quadratic singularities with a, well, it's singular, but the Hessian is non-degenerate. And I am also assuming that it's here that I am not totally satisfied by this. I assume that this integral cohomology group is generated by classes of algebraic cycles. Well, I could make this assumption much weaker, but that's not very important. That is satisfying on my example. Then, of course, this x0 it is singular, but I can desingularize it just by blowing up the nodes or take any desingularization, in fact. So here then the desingularization x0 tilde has an integral, so satisfies this property star z. Okay, so it's absolutely not hard. Just the point to know is that in this statement, well, yeah, I know that the general fiber has a decomposition of the diagonal with integral coefficient, cohomological, etc. And this I can certainly push or specialize to the central fiber. One has to make sense for singular varieties, so that will be more in homology. So that's a very easy point. Okay. Now all the thing which remains to be done is to compare what happened for the x0 and the x0 tilde. And I have to deduce, if I have this decomposition diagonal for the x0, what will it give upstairs? That here, that I use the fact that the singularities are reasonable. So my assumptions were much stronger. They have been improved by Kollhotel and Pirutka. And now we know more or less exactly what has to be put in the assumption. But in any case, one has to put an assumption, otherwise that becomes completely wrong. For example, take the simplest example, which to make you aware, not using that theorem, forgetting the assumption on the singularity, is the case of a cubic surface. The cubic surface in P3 is rational. It is rational, so it admits the decomposition of the diagonal. Now you can degenerate it, so that is the x0, to a cone over an elliptic curve. Okay? But the cone over an elliptic curve, when you desingularize it by blowing up the vertex of the cone, it's essentially a P1 cross the elliptic curve. And that thing does not admit a cohomological decomposition of diagonal because there are holomorphic forms, and that, as I said at the beginning, even with Q, it does not admit. So this is here that you see that some assumptions on the singularities is necessary. And how this completes the thing? It's simply because. So let me just comment on this implication that theorem B implies theorem A. So you can degenerate. So the general quartic double solid to the Artin Mumford double solid which is precisely the example which maybe this one. I have not said to know what it is, but it turns out this is the desingularization. Their example is a desingularization of quartic double solid with nodes. The nodes means that the quartic surface has ordinary singularities, and automatically the x0 will have ordinary quadratic singularities. So this is their example. It's a nodal quartic double solid, so it has 10 nodes, and the x0 tilde, as I already explained, it does not have. It does not satisfy that property of integral cohomological decomposition of the diagonal because it has a non-trivial Artin Mumford invariant. Okay, so I'm going to stop now.
Questions, comments?
So just to clarify, it is known that stable rationality doesn't imply rationality. There are examples of stable.
Yes, that was due to many people. The four authors' paper, namely Kollhotel, Sansuc, Beauville, and Senerton-Dyer. Where they exhibit examples, and the non-rationality was using this Clemens-Griffiths criterion, so that you are